Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So this is the notes for lesson 11A in Unit 2. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is write down the problem. So we have 7x minus 5 plus 5x equals 4. So you're probably going to want to pause this video every now and then and go write everything down in MyOpenMath. The next step is to combine your like terms. So do you notice we have 7x's and 5x's? We combine those and we have 12x minus 5 equals 4. Now we're ready to start solving, and when you start solving, you need to undo the addition or subtraction first. So we find our x, and then we have to find our plus or our minus. In this case, we have a minus. So we have to undo the subtraction. The inverse of subtraction is addition. So we're going to do 12x minus 5 plus 5 equals 4 plus 5. Minus 5 plus 5 is 0, and we end up with 12x equals 9. Okay, the last step in solving is to undo the multiplication. So to undo the multiplication, we find our x again, and we find the number that's right next to the x, and that's the 12. So we're going to divide by 12, divide by 12. 12 divided by 12 is 1x equals 9 divided by 12, or 9 over 12. We're not quite finished on this one because this one reduces. 9 and 12 will both divide by 3. 9 divided by 3 is 3. 12 divided by 3 is 4. And so your answer is 3/4. So now you're going to go type 3/4 into the answer and then move on to number 2. Make sure that you have all of the work. In order to get points for the notes, you have to have all of the work shown. So then you type in 3/4 up here at the top and you submit, and we move on to number 2. Then the first thing that we do again is we write the problem down. So we have 5x, negative 5x, plus 3, minus 4x equals negative 2. Okay, remember, first step is to combine like terms. We have 5 negatives and then 4 negatives. If we have all negatives, 5 negatives and then 4 negatives, we combine them together. So we add them, and we have 9 negatives. So negative 9x plus 3 equals negative 2. Now we're ready to start solving. When we solve, we find our x, and then we have to find the plus or the minus. In this case, you'll notice that we have a plus 3. We have to undo the addition. What is the inverse of addition? Subtraction. So we have negative 9x plus 3 minus 3 equals negative 2 minus 3. Always remember that whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other side. Now, on the left side, we have 3 minus 3, which is 0. So we cross that out. Then we have negative 9x equals, okay, make this plus the opposite. So I have 2 negatives plus 3 more negatives. If they're all negative, I combine them, so I have 5 negatives. Now I'm ready to do the last step in solving. I find my x, and I need to undo the multiplication. So I find the number that's next to the x, and in this case it's negative 9. So I divide by negative 9, divide by negative 9. Negative 9 divided by negative 9 is 1x, and then a negative divided by a negative is positive. So our answer is x equals 5/9. Now we go back up to the solution, you type in the solution, and you submit. Again, make sure that you have all of the work, because this is notes. You have to have every single step of the notes in order to get credit. Then we submit, and we move on to number 3. Don't forget, you want to pause the video anytime that you need to go write stuff in MyOpenMath. Okay, the first step is to write down the problem. So we have 5 parenthesis, v plus 4, close parenthesis, minus 10 equals negative 4. So with this one, we've added a new step, and that step is we have to distribute. So we must distribute the 5, and remember that means multiply. We have the 5 right here next to the parenthesis, it means multiply. So 5 times v is 5v, 5 times 4 is 20, minus 10 equals negative 4. So notice that the minus 10 equals negative 4, that didn't change. Now we need to combine our like terms. Now on this one, this is the only v that we have. But do you notice we have plus 20 and minus 10. So 20 minus 10 is what we're going to do. So we have 5v plus 10, because 20 minus 10 is 10, equals negative 4. Okay, now we're ready to start solving. To solve this, remember that we have to find our variable, and then we have to find the plus or the minus. In this case, we have a plus. We have to undo the addition, and the inverse of addition is subtraction. So we're going to do 5v plus 10 minus 10 equals negative 4 minus 10. Again, remember, whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. Now 10 minus 10 is 0, so we cross it out. So we have 5v equals, okay, now we have negative 4 minus 10, so we make it plus the opposite. So now we have negative 4 plus negative 10. We have 4 negatives plus 10 more negatives. If they're all negative, we combine them, so we add them, and we have 14 negatives. Now our last step is to undo the multiplication. So we find our variable, and we find the number next to the variable, and in this case it's 5, so we divide both sides by 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1v, and then we have negative 14 over 5. And that is already reduced, so we don't need to reduce it. So we come up here to where our answer goes, we type in negative 14 over 5, we submit, and we move on to the next problem. Don't forget that you have to show all of your work. So now we move on to number 4. So remember that the first step is to write down the problem. Okay, so 3 times parenthesis x plus 5, close parenthesis, minus 10 equals 19. Remember that the first step is to distribute, and the 3 is in front of the parenthesis. So we do 3 times x, we get 3x. We do 3 times 5, we get 15, minus 10 equals 19. After we distribute, we combine like terms. We have 15 minus 10, which is 5. So we have 3x plus 5 equals 19. Now we're ready to start solving. We find our x, and then we find either plus or minus. In this case, it's plus. So we have to undo the addition. The inverse of addition is subtraction. So we do 3x plus 5 minus 5 equals 19 minus 5. 5 minus 5 is 0, so we cross it out. We get 3x equals 19 minus 5 is 14. Our last step is to undo the multiplication. We find our x, we find the number that's next to the x, because remember, 3 next to x means 3 times x. So we divide both sides by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1x equals 14 over 3. Now we come up to our answer box, and we type in 14 over 3 and then we submit and move on to the next problem. Remember that you have to show all of the work. Make sure you're writing all of this down in My Open Math. Now we move on to number 5. Remember that the first step is to write down the problem. So we have 3 parenthesis 4x minus 4 plus 7x equals 5. Step 1 is to distribute. The 3 is in front of the parenthesis. 3 times 4x is 12x. 3 times negative 4 is negative 12, plus 7x equals 5. Now we combine like terms. We have 12x's and we have 7 more x's, so that makes 19x's minus 12 equals 5. Now we're ready to solve. We find our x, and remember the first thing that we have to do is undo the addition or subtraction. So we look for either a plus or a minus. We see a minus right there. So we need to undo the subtraction. What is the inverse of subtraction? Addition. So we do 19x minus 12 plus 12 equals 5 plus 12. Negative 12 plus 12 is 0, so we cross it out. 19x equals 17. And then our final step is to undo the multiplication. We find our x, we find the number that's right next to the x, because that means times, and we divide by 19 on both sides. 19 divided by 19 is 1x equals 17 over 19. So we go up to the top and we type in our answer, 17 over 19, and we submit. Make sure that you have shown all of the work. When you've shown all of the work, submit and move on to the next problem. Number 6. 8 parenthesis negative 2x plus 1. Close parenthesis minus 7x equals 8. First step is to distribute. The 8 is the number in front of the parentheses, so that's the number we distribute. 8 times negative 2x is negative 16x. 8 times 1 is 8. Minus 7x equals 8. Next, we combine like terms. We have negative 16x and negative 7x. So we have 16 negatives and then 7 more negatives. If they're all negative, we combine them. So we add them. We get negative 23x plus 8 equals 8. Now we're ready to solve. When we're ready to solve, we find our x and then we find either the plus or the minus. In this case, we have a plus. We have to undo the addition. The inverse of addition is subtraction. So we do negative 23x plus 8 minus 8 equals 8 minus 8. Never forget, whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. Okay, 8 minus 8 is 0, so we cross it out. And we have negative 23x equals, 8 minus 8. Well, we just said that was 0, but we have to put a number, so we have to put the 0 right there. So we didn't have to put the 0 on the left side because we already had the negative 23x. And anything plus 0 is that thing, right? So if you have 2 cookies plus 0 cookies, you still have 2 cookies. So adding 0 to negative 23x, it stayed negative 23x. Okay, now we're ready to do our last step, and that is to undo the multiplication. So we find our x, and we find the number next to the x, and that's the negative 23, and we divide both sides by negative 23. Negative 23 divided by negative 23 is 1x equals. Okay, now we come off to the side over here and we do 0 divided by negative 23. Okay, negative 23 times what number equals 0? Negative 23 times 0 equals 0. So the answer is 0. So then we go back up to the top, we type 0 into the solution, and we submit and go on to the next problem. Make sure that you show all of the work, that you have all of the steps. After you type in 0 and you've got all the work done, then submit and go on to the next problem. The last two problems in this lesson are slope. So this is a review of what we did last time. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to write your 2 points in the work area. So negative 11, negative 5, and then negative 10, 9. After you write them down, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to label one of them x1, y1, and the other one x2, y2. So x1, y1, x2, y2. Now, I could have done it the other way. I just decided to do the first point as x1, y1. Now, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. That's our formula, okay? So the first thing in the numerator is y2, and if I go over to my point, I see that y2 is 9. So you're going to type 9 into the first blank. Then it says minus y1, and if you look, y1 is negative 5. So we're going to type negative 5 into the second blank. Then in the denominator, we have x2, which is negative 10. So we're going to type negative 10 into the first blank in the denominator. And then minus x1, which is negative 11. So we're going to type negative 11 right there. So you're going to want to go to My Open Math, and in the first blank, type 9. In the second blank, negative 5. Then in the denominator, negative 10 in the first one, negative 11 in the second one. Now, whenever we have minus, we change it to plus the opposite. So this is going to become plus positive 5. 9 plus 5 is 14. Then in the denominator, we're going to make this plus the opposite. So we have negative 10 plus 11. We have 10 negatives and 11 positives. Okay, if you have both positives and negatives, you subtract the numbers. So 11 minus 10 is 1, but you're not finished. You have to ask yourself, is the 1 positive or negative? So we go back, we had 10 negatives and 11 positives. We had more positives, which means that the 1 is positive. Then 14 divided by 1 is 14. You type that in and you submit. Make sure you show all the work down below here. Once you've got everything in, written in, and then typed in, you submit. And go to the last problem. Okay, so the first step, again, is to write the 2 points. So we have negative 14, negative 15, and negative 15, negative 10. And then we label them x1, y1, x2, y2. Then we write y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay, now we're ready to start typing. So the first number in the numerator is y2, which is negative 10. So we're going to type negative 10 in the first blank. Then we have minus y1, which is negative 15. So we type negative 15 into the second blank. Then in the denominator, we have x2, which is negative 15. So we put negative 15. Then we have minus x1, which is negative 14. So you're going to go to My Open Math and you're going to type negative 10 in the numerator in the first blank and then negative 15 in the second blank. Then in the denominator, you're going to type negative 15 in the first blank, negative 14 in the second blank. Now, whenever we have minus, we change it to plus the opposite. So we end up with negative 10 plus 15. We have 10 negatives and 15 positives. If we have both positives and negatives, we subtract. 15 minus 10 is 5. But we're not done. We have to ask, is that positive 5 or negative 5? We had 10 negatives and 15 positives. We had more positives, therefore the 5 is positive. Then we go to the denominator and we make it minus or plus the opposite. So we end up with negative 15 plus 14. Again, we have both negatives and positives, so we subtract. 15 minus 14 is 1, but we're not finished. We had 15 negatives and 14 positives. We had more negatives, so it's negative 1. And then 5 divided by negative 1 is negative 5. Now you're going to type that in, make sure you have all the work shown, and then you're going to submit, and you are done with the notes. Don't forget that you're now going to get points in the gradebook for the notes. So you want to make sure that the notes are complete. Okay? All right, have a great day, and I will see you next class.